So that tells you something. So now I'm at the point where I'm doing a PhD, so I'll be overqualified, underexperienced. So what that means for the market, only God only knows, and for my bank balance, only God only knows.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to, first of all, this is a great forum, so thank you for putting it on. But I want to point out something that you just said about Australia being behind America and Canada in terms of equal opportunity and things like that. That's actually not true. And it's not true, and I say that because one of the reasons why I came over here from the States was because some of the issues that we're having in the States. What I found is that from the background of being a Westerner, I don't have much of a background from the African side, even though I'm African descent, is that the issues that I've seen in Australia, it's not, from my perspective, has been a racial thing when it comes to equal opportunity and jobs and placements and things like that. It seems like it's more of an East versus West, or a developing country to developed country issue. I haven't had an issue getting a job. And when I talked to a lot of HR representatives, I actually worked in a management consulting company under the HR director, and her issue, she's Australian, she said that it's more of, I can't hire someone without certain skill sets. And it was an issue for me because coming from a minority background, hearing someone say that, but then at the same time you have to kind of understand it, that in certain disciplines you have to have a certain level of English, you have to have a certain level of understanding and skill set. So my question based off all of that is, what programs are in terms of the panel, what programs are you establishing to ensure that the people who are coming from developing countries or underdeveloped countries are getting that education? Because it seems like from what I'm hearing is that that we're putting a lot of responsibility on Australians, meaning the Anglo-Australians, but there's an intermediary group. There are Australians who come from diverse backgrounds, who've been here 3-4 generations long, who can understand that minority side, but can also understand, you know, the Australian way, if that's what you want to call it, the Western way. So what are we doing to utilize that middle section to bridge that gap?
Can I address the first point, the East-West? That's, I think, as far as I'm concerned, a euphemism for a racialized understanding of difference. And the African-American population in the US has probably a different struggle or different challenges to the newly arrived Africans in America. And that hasn't been addressed. And the Arab Americans have similar problems. So probably drawing parallels between polar opposites is probably unfair on my part and perhaps on yours.
Yeah.
But using that intermediary, I mean, that intermediary, we may use it, we can call them the Greek Australians, who are, by most definitions, less visible than people like us. And that's another question or another barrier that doesn't get addressed. And within the Australian context, I mean, the White Australia policy formally got dissolved in 1972. And that's, it's older than I am, but a lot younger than many people, a lot older than some people here. So it's 2-3 generations, it's probably one generation. And irrespective of whether the Greeks, the Italians, and the Chinese have been here since the gold rush, if I can correct our moderator who forgot that selective history of Australia, they don't get out of that discourse. They're not included in that narrative. So it doesn't matter how long you're here. I mean, my family's been here 20 years, yet I'm still classified as newly emerging. At what point do we not become newly or emerging?
Well, that's
I mean, when does the butterfly fly?
Well, I guess that's not what I'm talking about inferring in terms of how long you've here. But in terms, we've been talking about, I guess, values or being able to understand, I guess there's a difference in communication between Australia and families who are coming from other countries or other backgrounds. And I'm trying to figure out how do you bridge that gap. We have this issue in the States where, when we talk about African society and African American society, how there's a lot of newly Africans who would say that African Americans are supposed to be the group to help bridge that gap. But I think that there is, that is something that probably we should take on. But I think in terms of Australia, you guys have a unique situation where it seems like the racial issues aren't as and again, this is coming from a 2-year-old view. I haven't been here that long, but the racial issues are not as clearly from what I've experienced. I haven't experienced the same racial issues that I would experience in the States. So I think that there is more opportunity for someone who's been here for a few years to help other people as they come into the country, kind of get that education background, get some of those missing links that they feel like they're feeling that they need without having to completely depend on government services while the parallel concept, trying to get the government to offer.
Can I just say that the Greeks, the Italians, the Vietnamese succeeded in spite of the system, not because of the system. So perhaps that's what the Africans and the Arabs need to do as well. They didn't need someone to act as intermediary. So they created small businesses. I mean, we have business districts in Springvale, in Oakley, where there's a predominance of one ethnic grouping. And it's not because they had access to government welfare systems. They did it on their own.
But that's what I mean.
Okay, guys, we're going to have to leave it there. We're rounding up. We're already 20 minutes over. We're already 20 minutes over. I'm sorry, guys. We have to.
I don't want this question actually to raise with that. I think the comparison that Yasmin has made is actually quite legitimate, and we know similar issues are faced by refugee and humanitarian entrants in the United States that are coming from war-torn Africa. And that comparison between African Americans who lived there for so many years and who have affirmative action to get employment, to get education, to get to Harvard School and to be a president is very different to the issues that we face here. Very different. Now let me just finish. Barack Obama became a president because he was given the chance to go to Harvard. He was the son of, if I may say this, affirmative action. I'm not suggesting that we should be having it here, but the challenges should not be underestimated. But also, the opportunities that are given to people here in Australia should not be underestimated either. I was a beneficiary, and I would be encouraging people, and I'm still a beneficiary, I would be still encouraging young people to work hard, to aspire to become leaders, not just within their own communities, but also in organizations. But the challenges should not be underestimated. And what we're discussing today isn't about blame game. The challenges that we face need to be discussed, and rightly so. We have people from the police, from immigration, from the Human Rights Commission, from the Victoria Multicultural Commission, and from the community sitting down discussing in a civilized way. And I think it is unfair, in my view, if I could just politely put it to you, to make a comparison, despite the fact that there are so many disadvantages faced by African Americans in the United States, to make a comparison, a community of 40 million people who have businesses, who have Oprah Winfrey, to compare to a small minority group, largely lives in the western suburbs of Melbourne. That's probably a bit too much.
Okay, well, it's, there are many layers of... We're going to sum up quickly now. Tonight we heard about crime, and we had a lot of questions for Tim early in the piece about the statistics. That's probably the hot topic. We heard that African youth are being repeatedly interrogated, and that there is some racial profiling out there, or perception of racial profiling, which has led to an overrepresentation of African crime rates. We also heard don't blame the victim. We heard a very good point from Dr. Burhan, the all-plate system, and we heard how critical it is not to throw youth away from minor misdemeanors, and that some sort of system needs to be set up, because it's impossible, virtually impossible, to get a job if you have a crime record. We also heard from Absalom a great point that it's a crisis for all of us, because it impacts everybody's quality of life while there's injustice in some communities. On the African women within Australian society, we heard there is a single mother culture. There's a lack of early intervention and sex education. There needs to be more access to employment. There are issues moving from a matriarchal to a patriarchal society, and there are many shades of education. It's not just about being book smart. On the integration side, we heard that education is critically important. It's very difficult if you come from an unskilled background. proficiency in language is important, and there's very much a need to educate both Africans about Africa in a positive light, and also to educate Australians about Africa, and that starts from teachers down and getting into curriculum and getting some positive images moving forward. And we finished off with equal opportunity. You know, some very good points about other countries using an anti-racism framework. What's the next step after degrees? Students are left are sitting there without any support networks after they've finished their degree. We heard from the Human Rights Commissioner that we've gone backwards on reporting on ethnicity and multiculturalism, and that she and the Commission aren't getting many complaints, and we heard why from the community, because they don't feel those complaints are bearing fruit. And we also heard finally an international context and the varied degrees of discrimination, and a comparison of the US and our situation here. If we can have one final one-sentence summary from each of our panellists on one key big idea to take away from tonight. Who's got the, the mic's over here. Starting with you, Absalom, if we can keep it short and sharp. One key takeaway.
Look, very short. I want to thank the organisers, and I want to thank the participants. I also want to thank the authorities that have come today, and I think this is a very useful conversation, a very open conversation, and I really want to thank particularly the police for coming here to clear the air. And we all have been at the receiving end since this article has been published, so I want to thank everyone who participated today. Thank you.
Well, it was a good learning process for me, and I'm delighted to see young educated taking action from our community, and we need more of this action. It's easy to sit and blame, but hard to go and do it. I have been in the forefront of fighting, but it's easy to make mistakes and easy someone to pick. So what I want is, we can't expect the other to understand us unless we walk and talk. We have a responsibility in our hand. Within Australia, within the white people, we see a lot of problems every day. Doesn't mean they are all bad or they are all good. There are people who speak up. And in our community, what's missing is, we need people to take positive steps, specially educated, to write. Because this society is more about writing. It's more, we come from a very religious background. If you tell me the Quran said this, I will believe it. But in Australia, if you say Herald's son said this, everyone will believe it. So this is a system that we are in, and we need to think that's the way we need to talk. No, that's a fact we live in, because we talk every day. Whatever the media says is a fact of our day. And next day they bring us a new agenda and they move us out from it. So what I'm saying is, we should not expect anyone to help us. We should take ourselves first, initiatives to correct. If there is mistake, yes, we have problems, yes, we have failures, and we have to face them. We have to stand together and work to improve. Because any society, healthy society, is not measured by how much money or how much good people are on the top, by how much you help the helpless, by how much we go to help the people who are facing the crisis in the streets. We have got these young people, young boys and young girls. Let's stand together and work and help them.
Thanks, Dr. Mahan. Key takeaway?
I think, as Absalom said, and certainly has been reflected in the room tonight, there's a lot of positive stories that don't get enough coverage. There's a lot of strong, positive, successful people in this room. And it's really our collective responsibility, and I speaking as a government agency, it's certainly our responsibility to work with all of you to make sure that those stories get out there. Equally, it's our responsibility to work together to address the problems that have been identified tonight, rather than suggest that there's someone else's problem to fix. And I think certainly that's, again, thank you to the organisers for getting us here, because I think apart from the diversity of views, you've got a sense of the diversity of responsibility that sits in the room and sits up with the panel at the front.
I just make general observations about overcoming the sorts of challenges that you have. You need leadership and you need success, and that's what breeds success, and that's what will eventually overcome the challenges. So again, as the others have said, I throw you out a challenge now to be leaders in your own community and to participate, not be victims.
I was born a cynic and raised a skeptic, so I'm not as hopeful as the previous speakers were. I was raised thinking that, you know, our very existence is political. So if you don't like what they're saying about you, change the conversation. And for the women in the crowd, don't wait for the men to create a space for you. Create your own space.
Okay, that brings things to a close. I'd like to put your hands together for our panellists who gave us the time tonight. And let's hear it for the Africa team who put on tonight's forum. We need more of these. Thanks very much, sir.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm President of Africa this semester, and I just wanted to thank all our panellists for taking time out of their busy schedules to attend tonight's forum. As a small token of our appreciation, we prepared some gifts for our panellists and our gracious host. Thank you, Patrick. And I'd also like to thank our committee for all their help and all their hard work.
Thank you very much.
And finally, I'd like to thank all of you for attending and for your interest.
Thank you.
As you know, there is a brief reception, so feel free to come on over. There's food and drinks provided.
Thank you.